It has been 3 months since the ambitious Rosetta space mission made history by landing a probe on that comet.
That amazing feat was achieved by a team from the European Space Agency. So what have they learned so far and how is the project going? We're joined now from Canberra by the mission's Head of Operations, Dr Paolo Ferri, who's here in Australia to speak about Rosetta. Paolo Ferri, good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
It's been an amazing achievement. Is the project travelling as well as you hoped so far?
Oh yes, very well. The spacecraft, which is still orbiting the comet, is going really very well. We're doing a lot of science in this moment, and the comet is getting active. It's very, very interesting at this time.
It is, and I want to get to what it's documenting right now, because I understand that the comet tail is forming, so we'll speak about that in a moment. But a few steps backwards, when the Rosetta started to approach the comet, was it in decent shape after its very, very long trip through space? Did it survive that as you hoped it would?
It survived remarkably well. You may know that we had to stay away from contact with the spacecraft for 2.5 years.
Yes.
So we had big questions on the 20th of January last year when it woke up. And it was very, very healthy. So it was a 10 years trip, but a very, very good one.
And what do you put that down to? Is that simply that you designed and you manufactured, if you like, you made this craft so well that it could withstand the pressures of space?
Well, of course, the mission was planned to be so long, also to go to these large distances. So there were a lot of redundant units in case something would fail. So we prepared in that sense. Actually, the number of failures was less than an average spacecraft experiences in 10 years. So it was better than planned.
Well, that's pretty good as well, isn't it? There was, of course, the issue of the probe, which landed on the comet and didn't last quite as long as you would have wanted. Have you gotten over the disappointment of that?
In fact, the probe was designed for 2 phases. Since we didn't know what to expect on the comet, because nobody had been there before, we had designed a primary phase of 60 hours where it would run with a prime battery, and this went very well. Of course, we were hoping that for the secondary phase, where it would work with solar panels and solar energy, that we would have more chances to operate the probe. Unfortunately, it ended up in a very shadowy place, and this second phase could not take place. So in that sense, this is a disappointment. But the primary mission was done.
Did you manage to get enough information or good information from the period of time that it was on the comet and sending information back to you?
Yes, the schedule of these 60 hours was packed. But all experiments that were planned were executed.
Okay.
We don't know yet whether all were successful. For example, there was one which was drilling under the surface, very important one, I must say, and the analysis of the samples, whether it has really collected samples or not, is still ongoing. But at least all operations were executed.
So how will you find out whether that operation has been successful? How is that information imparted to you?
The lander, during its lifetime, transmitted all the data it collected from these observations, these measurements, to the Rosetta probe, the probe that is orbiting the comet, and then Rosetta sent it to ground. So all the information has already arrived in those 60 hours. But the analysis is quite complex because, it's not like having it next door and you know everything what's going on. You have to work with these digital telemetry data and a lot of scientific analysis. So our scientists are very careful and cautious in doing this. It's
not like getting a blood test result where you know the result pretty quickly when you look at the figures.
Exactly, okay. Exactly.
All right, so what have we learned so far? What key questions, if any, have you been satisfied about when it comes to the origins of our universe, down to or based on the information you've got so far?
Well, there's many results that our scientists probably have already and they have not published, so they are also very, very cautious with that. They need first a formal scientific publication before they tell us what they found out. But for example, there is a big question that Rosetta wanted to tackle, and was the origin of water. We had seen that some comets, by observing the spectra of far distant comets, we thought that the water coming from on the Earth would be similar to the water that is on comets. Comets are 50% made of water. And so one big question was, let's analyze from proximity this comet and see, is this water the same type as the one on Earth? And most of the scientists expected the answer would be yes. And in fact, the answer is no. So this was a big result published just before Christmas. And now it has basically shaken the scientific community. Everybody is now scratching their heads and thinking, oh, well, if the water doesn't come from comets, does it come from other comets, or is it really all the theories have to be revised? So this is a very important result, even if it's a negative one.
So you've just made a whole lot of work for your colleagues, basically, by doing this, Paolo.
Yes, yes.
I can see how upset about that you are. Now, I guess everyone has to have, great enjoyment in their day-to-day work, and you've got a real payoff coming up soon, and that is in prime position to watch a comet form its tail and enter into that final phase of its life. That must be an enormously exciting thing to watch.
It's very, very exciting. Everybody is looking forward to this phase. The comet activity, so the tail forming, has already started, but very gradually. So we are still in a phase where gas and dust is thrown to us, but it's still manageable. We have recently changed our orbiting strategy. This was also planned in anticipation of more explosions, more gas and dust to be thrown to us. We stay a bit further away, we do flybys for a short time.
Yes.
So we have changed the strategy and we see how it develops. But our scientists are super excited. We expect the activity to grow by a factor 100 compared to today. So you can imagine it's going to be a real fantastic thing to witness from proximity.
I can imagine how exciting that must be. And I guess it follows, doesn't it, that comet, once the tail is formed, it could be in orbit in that spectacular way for how long? For quite some time?
We certainly plan to stay there until the end of the year. This was because the comet with Rosetta nearby will reach the closest point to the sun in August, and that's for us very important. So the activity will grow up to that point at least. We want to see it all.
Yeah.
Then we plan to stay a few months afterwards when the activity will decrease. If the spacecraft is still healthy, at the moment everything seems to indicate that the spacecraft will survive the rest of the year. We will go on for a few more months until autumn 2016.
Which is a terrific venture in itself, just to sort of stay with the project that long. I think what's really been captivating about the Rosetta mission as well is that it's as I mentioned earlier, the European Space Agency, but also with some help from Australia as well, has been involved in this mission. And I know that's at least in part why you're out here now. Usually when we discuss these things, it's the Americans who are making the running on it. You must feel awfully proud that Europe, with some help from Australia, has achieved this.
Absolutely, absolutely. This was something that never had done before. We have not had help from Australia. We have these ground stations which were very, very important for receiving the signal in the most critical moments of the mission. We had help, of course, also from the international community, and also our colleagues from NASA were flying an instrument on board our spacecraft, in fact 2 instruments. So it's an international cooperation, but the core is Europe, and we're very proud of that.
All right, Paolo, so now that you've conquered this comet, what next?
Oh, we have a series of fascinating missions. Well, for me, maybe not as Rosetta. I invested almost 20 years of my life on this mission. But we're going to other planets. We plan in 2016 to go to Mars and have the first European landing on Mars.
Yes.
We will go to Mercury together with our Japanese colleagues. We fly 2 spacecraft together. We carry them to Mercury. And in the next decade to Jupiter. And so I'm looking forward to these projects, although Rosetta will remain in my heart.
And I have to ask you, if you're invited or allowed to go on board, would you take that one-way trip to Mars?
I think I would, although I would have preferred to go to the comet. But still, Mars is still interesting enough.
Doesn't seem to be much room on that comet.
That's right.
Paolo Ferri, molto grazie. Good to speak to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.